there, everybody. It's Mike DiLisio, and I'm continuing with my short series on games that I've crowdfunded over the last number of years. And today I'm going to be talking about my top misses. These are games that, for one reason or another, just didn't work out for me. They were ones that obviously I was excited enough about to put my money behind and back them, but for one reason or another just didn't hit the mark for me. And so, you know, that is a risk that you take whenever you are going to do a crowdfunding project, is that it may not be something that is exactly what you had hoped it was when you first put your support behind it. So here we go. Number 5 is Terror Below. Now, this one is one that I was really excited about, based almost completely off of the theme. This seemed like Tremors, the board game, and I was really jazzed about that. And I remember actually that when I pledged for it, it was one that I was able to pick up at Gen Con. I was living local to Gen Con, and so I picked up my pledge of Terror Below at Gen Con, and I played it not long after, and it was okay. It was fine, I thought, but it was a game that I thought was a little bit fiddly, and honestly, it's been years since I've played it, so I've forgotten a lot of it. But I just remember that it did not kind of give me that excitement that I was looking for. It didn't, you know, it had some cool looking art, the components looked fine and everything, and so the theme was evoked that way, but the game just felt like just too much going on, a bit of a mess. So Terror Below just is one that never worked for me, unfortunately. I know that a number of people I've played it with did like it, so this might just be one where, you know, this is just not a game for me. All right. My number 4 is Rice Dice. Now, this was one that I backed solely because it was a dice version of a game that I do like quite a bit called Spirits of the Rice Paddy. And so I thought, hey, if we can get kind of that core experience into a quicker, easier to set up and play dice game, that would be awesome. Because one of the downsides of Spirits of the Rice Paddy is that there's a fair bit of setup and a lot of components and things along those lines. And I thought, you know, maybe this would be a way to kind of get that, scratch that itch in an easier way. But unfortunately, it's a game that just it really didn't have any of that feel that I was looking for. It's a very standard dice rolling and manipulation game, and it didn't have any hook. There was nothing really there that made me want to keep coming back to it. Probably the coolest thing about the game was the packaging. It came in a kind of this interesting sized box, and I was able, when I backed it, I got a custom wooden insert, which is nice, but the game itself is not one that I'm terribly interested in coming back to. So unfortunately, that one didn't work for me. That was Rice Dice. Number 3 is one that is, it's really a shame because I wanted to like this game. Well, I wanted to like all these games, of course, but this was one that's part of a long series. This is Tiny Epic Pirates. And so I have backed most of the Tiny Epic games, and for better or for worse, you know, I've liked just about all of them. Some I really, really like. My favorite is Tiny Epic Quest. But Tiny Epic Pirates was one that I really was looking forward to, and I think that's why it's on this list. Not because it's necessarily a bad game. I think it's an okay game. But the reason it's on the list is because I was so excited about the theme and the pick up and deliver kind of central mechanism. That's one of my favorite mechanisms in a game. And so I thought, okay, here's one with a cool theme, with a core mechanic that I know that I like, and the game just fell flat for me. Now, primarily I played it solo. I played it both solo and multiplayer, but I found that the solo game just did not work well for me at all, and so that was disappointing. And then when I played it multiplayer, it wasn't all that exciting either. I felt like it was just kind of going through the motions. It felt overly long for what it was. It just didn't work for me, and it's a shame, like I said, because I have been a fan of many of the Tiny Epic games, but Tiny Epic Pirates just didn't do it for me. All right, number 2 is The Island of El Dorado. And this is one where actually I backed an expansion. Okay, I had been exposed to the base game, and this expansion promised a cooperative and a solo variant, and so I backed it off of the basis of that. boy, it just did not work. It's a game that looks, to me, it looks beautiful. I love the aesthetic of the game. I love even the components I think are very nice, although of course that's going to be a personal thing. But the gameplay itself is just very, very, it's just boring. That's the only word I can think of. It is just boring. And the solo variant I found to be overly convoluted, overly complex. Not a lot of bang for your buck there. Like, you're just like going through all of this process to set up. It's a lot to kind of to manage and manipulate for a very, very kind of shallow game experience. And so it's beautiful, but the gameplay just isn't there for me. And then my number one miss is Philosophia Floating World. And this one is a real bummer because I actually did a review for this game on the channel. And this was one that I felt like had so much potential, and it just didn't hit any of that potential. It somewhat looks nice. I mean, some aspects of the game I think are nice. Some of the components I think are really nice, and some I think are not. So it's very kind of all over the board. It doesn't have a cohesive look to it. Gameplay-wise, the biggest mistake I feel like they made was that they were really pushing for this to be a simultaneous play game, where almost all of the game everyone's playing at the same time, and you've got this kind of an influence track that will break ties if you're both trying to do the same thing at the same time. It doesn't work well. It's a mess. They have in the book a variant to play it as a turn taking, and that works better. But it still just doesn't hit the mark. It's a game that has a couple of neat ideas. Like, I really like this idea of you're going to take one of your opponent's cards and you're going to do an I split you choose for the actions that they take on that round. I think that's a really neat idea where you're kind of determining what actions, well, at least you're giving them choices of actions that they're going to take. That's neat. But beyond that, it's kind of a standard set collection game. There's some really over-the-top randomness in there that makes the game less than exciting. So, unfortunately, Philosophia Floating World was the game that just missed the mark the most for me. All right, well, that's going to be it for now. This is Mike DiLisio signing off from Dice Tower headquarters.